Hey guys, welcome to week 2, your first workout of Master Your Mobility. This week, as you have seen, we're going to talk about all about the shoulder, okay? So our shoulder joint, how it moves, how it rotates. Hopefully you've looked over a little bit of the shoulder anatomy info in your info packet, and then that way you have slightly better understanding of how the shoulder moves and what movements we're going to be doing with the shoulder. Today, we're going to really focus on rotation of the shoulder, okay? So our ability to internally and externally rotate, okay? So we are gonna start with our axial rotations, all right, of our shoulder. So you can either be kneeling, standing, sitting, whatever you want for this first one. And our arm is just gonna be out to the side. We can make that fist. Make sure you're creating some tension and irradiating through the body. And we are going to rotate that palm up towards the ceiling. And then rotate that thumb down as far as we can go. We're gonna do 5 of these rotations. So we're starting with just our basic axial rotations just to help that joint get warmed up, get used to rotating it before we get into our pale rails. Good. We're going to come on over to the other side and do those on that side as well. So palm all the way up, palm all the way down. And 5. Okay guys, all right. So next what we're going to do is come into our axial rotation, but this time we're going to do it in a quadruped position, okay? So I'm gonna be kind of angled so you guys can see my shoulder move up, and I'm actually gonna pull my sleeve up a little bit so you can see it better. So this time our palm is locked. So we're gonna look at the motion coming from our elbow. So we're gonna rotate that elbow all the way down. We're gonna rotate all the way out, okay? We're gonna do 5 of those. Two. 5. Good. We're going to go ahead and do that on the other side also. So rotating all the way down that elbow, rotating all the way out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Okay. Now quickly also guys, just real quickly, for one section of this workout, you are going to need something. So I'm just going to use my shoe, okay? Make it nice and easy for you guys. You won't need it right now, but we are going to need it a little bit later. So I'll give you a second, run and grab either a shoe, a yoga block, whatever you have that's just going to prop your hand up a little bit. We will need that later, okay? So, but first, what we're going to do is come down onto our side. We're going to start with our internal rotation pale rail. So we're focusing on this bottom arm. Your head can be wherever's comfortable, okay? You're kind of rolled forward, pinning that shoulder blade down on this arm, and this arm is pointing straight up right now. We're going to take our top hand, and we're going to help just kind of, I don't want you to stretch it all the way to the floor. We're just going to stretch it a little bit, okay? You should feel it kind of deep in that shoulder joint. Make sure you're getting the rotational aspect, that you're not getting a like bending forward, or we're not forcing it out, so we're not straightening that elbow. That elbow joint is staying at 90 degrees. we're taking that top hand, we're just rotating it slightly. You can rest your head down if you want. You can use that shoe to rest your head on if you want to. And we are just gonna hold this position, okay? So we're gonna hold this pale rail for 10 breaths. Good. After that 10th breath, what we're going to do is push our two hands into each other with equal resistance, okay? So as if you're trying to externally rotate that shoulder out, and as if you're trying to push that hand further into internal rotation. My hand doesn't move, okay? I just am pushing down with equal pressure. Good. And now you guys are going to try to, without using this hand, try to push this hand closer to the floor. Keep going. Trying to rotate that arm a little bit more. Good. And then we're going to replace this hand back on top and just hold this stretch. I'm resting my neck down. My neck is getting tired. All right, we're going to hold this stretch again for 10 breaths. And good. And on that 10th breath, we're going to do that pushing up and down with equal force again, holding that position where it is. Good. And now trying to drive that hand closer to the floor. Woo. So if you notice, my arm started trying to sneak forward, so I tried to stop it there. I don't want that arm to sneak down. We're really trying to focus on it coming from this rotation in our shoulder joint, okay? We can replace that top hand. We're just gonna hold that stretch for a second. Good, and then we're gonna let go. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move this joint that we just kind of increased internal rotation into. We're gonna rotate it out of that position. And now we're just going to kind of do a modified axial rotation, moving in and out of rotation. We're going to do this 10 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Okay. So I'm going to spin around, and you guys are just going to roll over if you want, or you can spin around also. And we're now going to do that same thing on our other arm. Okay? So we're locking and loading that joint. I might use my shoe as a pillow this time. All right, we're here. We're rotating that arm down into a little bit of internal rotation. Trying to keep that shoulder at 90 degrees of flexion and that elbow at a 90-degree angle. Once we feel a little bit of a stretch, we're gonna hold it there. And we are going to hold for 10 breaths. Good, and on that 10th breath, we're gonna push up and down with equal resistance. Good, we're gonna remove that top hand, trying to actively internally rotate our bottom hand further. Good. Replacing that top hand, feeling a little bit of a stretch, and we are going to do another 10 breaths here. Good, guys. After those 10 breaths, pushing up and down with equal resistance. Good, and trying to rotate that arm down more. Good, replace that top hand for a little bit more of a stretch. All right, and now we're gonna go into our active rotations. So we're rotating that arm out and then down 10 times. All right, awesome, guys. So now we're going to need that shoe, okay? So we're going to do our external rotation, all right? So what I want you to do is that front of your shoulder to be down on the ground. We want to see how flat we can get that arm, okay? So if this position is already a stretch for you, then you don't need the shoe, okay? So if you're already feeling kind of by trying to get that front of that shoulder blade down to the ground, okay? If you're already feeling a stretch into external rotation for you, you don't need the shoe. If it doesn't feel like enough of a stretch, you can kind of change your shoe angle on your arm. So nice and close would be the most external rotation stretch, all right? That's even a little much for me. So mine roughly sits right around there is a good external rotation stretch, okay? You can do the same thing with yoga block. If you feel like this is too light of a stretch, okay, a yoga block will give you a little bit more of a stretch, all right? But a shoe works just as well. So you're going to sit into this position, feeling that little bit of a stretch for 10 breaths. Good. After that 10th breath, we're going to push our forearm towards the ground. So you're pushing that arm down towards the ground, holding that. Good. And then we're going to try to, keeping that front of that shoulder down, lift your arm up off the shoe. Try to keep that front of that shoulder down though on the ground. If you got a little more motion, you can slide that shoe back. If not, we're just going to return to that stretch, pushing that front of that shoulder down into the ground. Our elbow is at 90 degrees, our shoulder is down, and our shoulder is at about 90 degrees from our body, okay? And we are going to now again hold this position for 10 breaths. Good. After that 10th breath, again, we're going to push down into that shoe. Good. And now trying to lift that shoulder, or lift that forearm up off the shoe. Good. Go ahead and relax into that stretch again. We're just going to sit in the stretch for a couple seconds. Good. And now we're going to take that shoe away, okay? And we are just going to do 10 external rotation lift-offs, okay? So similar to the internal rotation active range of motion, but we are just going to do 10 lift-offs. So if you want, I'm going to just kind of push my hand here to try to really get that motion coming without rotating my scapula. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whew. Okay. Switching to the other side. Oh, army girl over. All right. So if one side you can use the shoe and the other side you can't, that is totally fine, okay? So it's just gonna depend on what range of motion you have on each arm, all right? So we are here, like this arm, I can get this shoe about here. So I used to play softball, this is my throwing arm. So I have way more external rotation in this arm than I do on my other side. So here is pretty comfortable for me, okay? So we're gonna hold this for our 10 breaths. Good, and after that 10th breath, we're pushing down into that shoe with our forearm. Good. Now we're trying to lift that arm up, keeping the front of that shoulder down and hold. Good, relax. If you need to scooch that shoe up a little bit, you can. We're gonna sit into this stretch again, 10 breaths. And guys, like I said, with my shoulder being my throwing arm and I can get a lot more external rotation, you're gonna find that throughout your body, that one side gets more motion. It's not necessarily a bad thing either. As long as you have control over your passive range of motion, or as much of your passive range of motion as you can, that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're trying to gain through this program, is getting control of as much of our available passive range of motion, our flexibility, as possible by doing these different exercises to develop strength and control in those end ranges of those positions, okay? Probably have about 1 or 2 more breaths. Good, and on that last breath, we're gonna push down into the shoe. Good, trying to lift up that arm. All right, and rest in that stretch for just a couple seconds. Good, and then we're gonna remove that shoe and we're gonna go into those active lift-offs again. Six, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. All right, guys, so we're done with the shoe. We're gonna stay down onto the floor, okay? So now that we opened up those internal and external rotation ranges of motion, we are going to do our swimmer's rotations, okay? To now actively move through all of that rotation. So with our swimmers, we're gonna do both hands at the same time. So we start in total internal rotation of our shoulders by hands placed on our back. We're gonna lift those hands up extend our elbows, come out to the side where we do an axial rotation, bringing those arms up, bending them behind our heads into complete external rotation. Straightening those elbows out, down to the side where we do another axial rotation, bringing them down into complete internal rotation, okay? So we are going to complete 5 of those. So that was 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Good. Go ahead and rest. And now, with rotation, we also have to talk about the scapula a little bit. So, I do want to do just close today on a little bit rotation of that scapula. All right. So the scapula is our shoulder blade, and it is part of the shoulder complex. So it is not the sole part that makes up our shoulder. We have our GH joint, which is our glenohumeral joint, which we just worked with those axial rotations and that internal rotation and external rotation. But our scapula also assists us in internal and external rotation. So we want to make sure that it is moving well as well, okay? So to work our scapula today, what we are going to do is some closed chain scap cars. So we're going to come up into our quadruped position. Okay, and do you remember the scap cars we did in that week 1 where we were just kind of doing big shoulder circles? We're gonna do that same thing again, except we are in kind of a locked position, so you really have to focus on what we're doing, okay? So, we're gonna start just squeezing those shoulder blades back. So just retracting our scapulas, then I want you to think about shrugging them up, okay? Then we're going to push the floor away. Okay, so protracting those shoulder blades forward, pulling our shoulder blades down, retracting them again. Okay, so now we're going to go in the opposite direction. We're going to pull them down, push the floor away, shrug them up, retract them back. Okay, so that's 1 full rotation. We are going to do 5 full rotations. So shrug up, push away, down, retract, down, push away, up, retract. Okay, that's 2. We're going to go ahead and keep going. Up, away, down, retract, down, away, up, retract. Up, away, down, retract, down, away, up, retract. Up, away, down, retract, down, away, up, retract. 1 more. Up, away, down, retract, down, away, up, retract. Good. All right, guys. That is it for week 2, day 1, working on our shoulder rotation. Your shoulders should feel nice and loose now. If you want, go ahead and you can do a shoulder card just to kind of see where your motion is. Here is where you should notice the most difference after this video. Again, as always, you won't necessarily see a dramatic improvement from just doing 1 or 2 videos. This is going to be a cumulative effort over the weeks, and it's going to be a consistent effort even after these 6 weeks are done to continue to improve your mobility and focus on gaining control over your flexibility. All right. Have an awesome rest of your day, guys, and I will see you on week 2, day 2.